Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the school committee meeting to order. Time is 6 o'clock. Today is November 5th. Our next meeting has changed, so if you could make a note, it's now going to be on Monday, December 17th at 6 p.m. here at the Senior Center. Originally, it was scheduled for Wednesday, December 12th. But because the planning board is going to be meeting that night, we're going to move our meeting to Monday, December 17th. So what we'll do first is we'll rise and salute our flag. We're then going to have a moment of silence for our veterans. We'll then have our clerk call the roll to make sure that we have a quorum sufficient to meet, and then we'll get into this evening's agenda, which consists of the minutes, public comment, superintendent's report, subcommittee reports, motions and resolutions, personal privilege, and then we're going to entertain a vote to go into executive session, and then we'll move to adjourn. So if there aren't any questions from the members, I'd ask you to all rise and please salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so today. Thank you. We'll now have the clerk call the roll. Here.
Ms. Yesi, here. Ms. Bonaro?
Here.
Mr. Drummy?
Here.
Mr. Froyo?
Here.
Mr. Iovino?
Here.
Ms. Leon?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Pettifora?
Here.
Superintendent O'Terry?
Here.
Student Representative Thompson? Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum sufficient to meet this evening. We'll now get into this evening's agenda. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from October 1st, 2018. Motion by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any questions on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are accepted unanimously. Item number 2 is public comment. This is an opportunity for people from the public to address the school committee. We'd ask that you approach the microphone, please state your name and address, and speak for no more than 3 minutes. Public comment is now open.
Good evening. Penny Kalman, 194 Bainbridge Street in Malden. Thank you, everybody. I have several concerns that I would like to address tonight, and I hope you will bear with me, because personally, I don't want to die protecting my students and leave my 2 children without a mother. In this 20th year of my teaching career, never have I ever felt so unsafe, unprotected, and alone without proper administration or director. I feel this committee has turned its back on the Salemwood School students, staff, time and again. The city will find itself not only with a mass exodus of talented, dedicated, and veteran and new teachers, but also a vote against extended learning time if this continues. I understand that Dr. Jose Salgado is under investigation. Why would you leave Ms. Phan and Ms. McGonigal alone to run a building with almost 1,200 students? Dr. Salgado changed our teaching schedules, which left teachers with very limited common planning time. We have so little time that a teacher feels it necessary to post SEI teaching strategies in our bathrooms, the staff bathrooms. Our 2 administrators have had their hands tied, unable to make necessary changes. Why hasn't the school committee and central office stepped in and made a presence in our building? How nice it would have been for the past month and a half to see a school committee member step in as a substitute, help with lunch duties, or just show face so that the staff, students, and parents won't feel unforgotten or unworthy. Some on the committee are former Malden Public School employees and administrators. If this were the case at another prized and smaller K-8 school, Malden, I feel the school would not have been ignored. But because this occurred at the Salemwood School, everyone looks the other way. We teach students from every corner of the city, so all your constituents' children go to our school. This is not just a problem for the school committee members in our ward. This is for all wards. Why is the Salemwood School, again, the only SEI school? I've been asking and even begging for help for this for years. And for years, the segregation of one population in our school system is only getting worse, time and again, not better. How can the school committee feel good about segregating a population to one school instead of neighborhood schools? How can our new immigrant neighbors feel the love of their new neighborhood if they are sent across the city to the only SEI school? We receive emails every day with names of new students. This problem is not going away. To ignore it for another year is irresponsible of this committee. The threatening incident that occurred the night of Monday, October 8th, and was investigated hours after into Tuesday morning has left me sleepless and questioning the city's priorities. The school system is obviously not a priority any longer as it was in the past. We took pride in our public schools. Politicians boasted about our new schools, our diverse students, our educated staff. Each teacher has a 2-pound binder in our doorway with protocols. But when it came time to informing the staff about threats, we came after informing the rest of the city. Fellow colleagues, friends, and family across the city, they were calling us, they were emailing us, they were texting us about our well-being, and the staff in our own building had no idea what they were talking about. That was infuriating. We, the first line of defense, aren't even worthy of knowing about a threat in our lives and the lives of our students prior to the rest of Malden. An emergency email, an emergency team leader meeting to inform the teams, an emergency email like the one we received stating we no longer had a principal. I hate guns. I never allowed my children to even play with Nerf guns. But after the social media threat, maybe permitting teachers to have guns might be a smart idea. If the school committee thinks it's okay for the child to enter a building after threatening lives, maybe it is more personal. Maybe I do need protection. Parents are too afraid to come forward and complain out of retaliation against their child or to have their child wrapped up in the middle of an investigation. What a sin. What an awful time we live in that parents are too afraid to say something when their child has been threatened. What does that say about our social emotional experiences in our society? How are we supposed to teach our children to see something and say something when the parents are too scared? I'm scared too. I'm scared that the city has turned its back on the Salemwood School. I'm scared that without proper common planning time, that we won't get to my students' needs that require the time. I'm scared that with only 2 administrators, that things are only getting missed, to no fault of their own, because they're giving 110%. I'm scared that we're given a population larger and needier than any other school, yet are not given proper time to get together to problem solve, help our students, meet with guardians and outside resources. I'm scared for my safety. I'm scared for the safety of my students. I'm scared for the safety of my colleagues. I'm scared the incredible families will also leave Malden in droves because they are seeing their children's education go down. We need those teachers. We need those administrators. We need to feel safe, and we need to feel involved. I don't want to become a statistic on some politician's graph chart. I don't want to leave my 2 children motherless and my students without a teacher. Please stop turning your back on Salemwood School. We matter.
Anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now. Just state your name and address for the record. Anybody else?
Good evening, Amanda Maffio, 81 Wheat Street, Malden.
Good evening.
Good evening. As my colleague just said, school violence is not diminishing. School shootings are not a thing of the past. They are real, and they are happening all around us. The question that we're not comfortable asking right now is what happens if that intruder that we so carefully are training to be locked down and to shut down the classroom is one that's already in the building. I acknowledge and recognize the city officials who investigated the matters that happened this year. But each case is disturbing in its own right. The one that's bothered me is the student bringing a BB gun with pellets into a school. It's not a toy, it's a weapon. It had no right to be in a school building. The punishment should be as severe as the lives of thousands of students who were threatened. Our students still sit next to students in class who they know have jeopardized their sense of safety. In January 2018, CBS released an article, and I'm going to state some of the facts that they mentioned. The article is called, "Parents May Need to Take Greater Precautions When It Comes to Participating with BB, pellet, and paintball Guns." 170% of the population in 23 years, in a 23-year period, found eye injuries were higher with non-powder guns. Eye injuries treated in children in U.S. emergency departments from 1990 to 2012 equaled 442,000 children. That's an average of more than 19,200 children a year, or about 2 every single hour. Most were treated and released, but almost 5% needed to be hospitalized. The article never said that a BB gun was a toy gun. I do not want any student to be among the 5% needed to be hospitalized, or one of the 442,000 students who need to be taken to the emergency room. I certainly do not want any of them to be brought to the hospital because of a BB gun injury that occurs within the 4 walls of our schools. They come to school to learn, not to be shot. Mayor Christensen gracefully accepted dozens and dozens of letters, and I thank you again, written by my 6th grade students regarding school safety. The question posed to my students during our opening Do Now activity was what would make our schools safer. This was only intended to truly be a 5-minute writing prompt, but it led to a class discussion through every single class that day. And it became evident to me that I had to teach them an opportunity to express the power of their voice in an appropriate way. So each one of them took the time to write the mayor a letter. The most common suggestions throughout them before I mailed them was metal detectors. What I considered a beautiful suggestion was to have safety ramps in all the schools so that students who were on crutches and that were handicapped could have a way to exit the school if need be from the 4th floor. I truly didn't understand the depths of their fears as 6th graders until that conversation. I am a lifelong resident of Malden. School safety has come a long way since I have been a student, and I am grateful to those who have created a safer school. But my hope is that we do not forget that among our progress, we still have a far way to go. I do not know if any school in the world can ever say that they are 100% safe, and that thought alone is one that keeps most of us awake at night. But it is also fuel for the fire to continue to create a safe environment for our students, especially for those who consider it home. There are an abundance of students who consider school their home, their safety, their protection from the chaos of their traumatic lives. I don't want us to make their lives any more traumatic. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now. Okay, hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. We'll now drop down to the superintendent's report, item number 3 on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'd like to call Principal Don Concanon of the Forestdale School to address the school committee regarding the upcoming field trip proposed by the Forestdale School to Washington, D.C. That trip would be on Tuesday, May 2nd through Friday, May 31st. So Mr. Concanon will come up and provide more details for the committee.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. We've gone on the trip several times since I've been principal. It's a great trip. We've made a couple of changes to it. During April vacation, a lot of kids can't come because of athletic events, team tryouts, and things like that. So the parents wanted us to see if we could do it during school, so we moved it towards, we proposed to go to May 28th through the 31st. Those are the changes. We do some fundraising during the course of the year. We've had 25 families have already shown interest, and we have a lot more that have shown interest recently because of the date changes as well. I have Diana Sullivan, who has gone on the trip. Since I've been there, she's run the trip.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Ms. Sullivan?
No, it's a great experience. The kids love it. That's all they can really talk about when they get back, and I hope we can get to go again this year.
All right. Let's take some questions from the members. Any questions? Ms. Beardsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've asked this before, but are some families put off by the financial, I mean, I know you do scholarships and whatnot, but do families that can't afford it feel like they can approach, go on the trip?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We make appropriations as staff. We do things where the staff has stepped up and helped some families that wanted to go that might not be able to afford it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Froyo, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any further discussion? Everybody clear on the dates, what we're doing? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Superintendent?
At this time, I'd like to do our 2018 MCAS results presentation. I would ask that the school committee step down and sit in the front rows so we can watch the slideshow that we've prepared. Okay. We need to have the mic on so folks at home can hear my presentation on this. So this is our last year's results from the spring MCAS, and I know this time last year we presented an overview of the new MCAS and the legacy MCAS. So I'm going to first present Malden High School because they are in the legacy category. They took the not the MCAS 2.0 test, and it still has the same ratings that the old MCAS did, and then the K through 8s took the next generation MCAS. So to start off, we want to make sure that our belief statement is up there, that every student can and will succeed academically, every student can and will succeed socially, every student can and will succeed emotionally, every student will feel connected and supported, every family will feel connected and supported, and the Malden Public Schools will meet the needs of all students. That is the goal and our beliefs and the baseline for which we will operate. Getting into the analysis of Malden High School, what we had our principals and the admin team do was to get together when they were doing the analysis of their MCAS scores, and we wanted this presented in very easy to understand terms. Areas of strength, what we're doing well, what we need to improve on are areas of challenge, and then what the next steps are. So in looking at the MCAS results from Malden High School, Principal Mastrangelo and his team, areas of strength, the CPI, the Composite Performance Index, increased in an economically disadvantaged and Hispanic Latino subgroup. That was an improvement. The CPI also increased in our English learners and former English learner subgroup. In science, we met the target in Latino and Hispanic. And with our math, our SGP, that's the student growth percentile, we met the target in the Asian subgroup. I consider the SGP to be a very strong determination of how effective we are, because it takes a student with the same score of all the other students in the state and how they performed the following year. So it's one in which I think levels the field and gives you a better calibration of how a student is performing. The standard for that is a 50, so anything above a 50, you're outperforming the state average, and that is a good match there. Areas of challenge, we really did not meet our CPI in all subgroups in the English language arts. We're looking to improve that by really getting more opportunities to write across the curriculum, across the discipline and curriculum. We want to make sure that we're implementing our writing with colors with better fidelity and more widely across the curriculum as well. It's not confined to only English language arts. In our math, we did see a decline in African American and Asian subgroups, which gets into that little paradox there. We did meet the target in SGP, but in the overall, we had a bit of a decline. Also with science, we saw a decline in African American and white subgroups. So we've got our work cut out. Mr. Mastrangelo and his team is ready for this. Here's the way our scores looked on the aggregate, and you can see that we are below the state average. This has been a recurring pattern at the high school for a long time. This is not necessarily a surprise. We did have a change in leadership there in the middle of last year. Mr. Mastrangelo is now the principal and will be there for the foreseeable future as the leader, and I think that he is on board in terms of implementing changes that will produce the results that we need to. When we get into it at the end, you'll see that we are in an upward trajectory through our middle grades, and we want to see that continue through the high school. And we can look at how we compare to some of our like schools and some of our urban neighbors. There's no pointer on this, right, Natalia? Where are you? No, okay. All right. Next, we'll move on to the Ferryway. The Ferryway School, as you can see, had some real nice success in terms of a higher percentage of our students that met and exceeded expectations. That's the new rating system under the new next generation MCAS. We had 54% at the Ferryway that met or exceeded, and the state average was 51, while the district average was 48. So that's a real nice step there for the Ferryway team. We were very happy about that. They did very well with in English language arts with our economically disadvantaged students in grades 3 through 8, and also with in math, economically disadvantaged. You saw that the Ferryway, 38% of our kids in that category were meet or exceeds the state, and in district, they outperformed it, so we did well. Also, just to note there, as a district, we did much better than the state average. So that's, I think that we need to look at overall with some of our economically disadvantaged kids. We're doing okay. We're outperforming the state on that, so we're really happy. I think it's a tribute to the way our staff embraces all students. We don't look at economically disadvantaged as a disadvantage. We get them into our classroom and we treat them the way we would our own family is the real baseline for that. In the math area, we have some challenges there in grades 3 through 8. We were at 41%, and the state average was 47, so we do have a little bit of an uphill climb there. Grade 4, and we could look at this statistically across the state, but sometimes one year there's one where we just missed the mark, and this might be it at the Ferryway with grade 4. And we're looking at ways in which we're delivering instruction, supporting our students at the grade 4 level as well. We also in science, grades 5 and 8, below the state average, and we're looking to close that gap. So the Ferryway is looking to have teachers work with their math coaches in the math area to identify specific areas of need. That's really getting down to the granular level of examining how our students did on particular tests. Was it the open response, the word problems? We really get right down to that level and then work with that student so that they become more proficient and more confident when they are taking it going forward. And also looking at really a vertical integration, working with our math coaches in grades 5 through 8 so that we see that continuum. I can show you evidence at the end of this that I think that overall we're doing well with that. This is really getting into a bit of a fine-tuning and where we want to get all of our schools to go. Writing with colors, and I think we look at that at the Ferryway in particular, where they did very well. I think it's a tribute to their embracing of the Writing with Colors program last year, and they want to continue that with a full implementation and work on those gains. I think that, my experience in my previous district was that it continued to get better, it snowballed, and it became part of our teaching vernacular, really, even with our students. They understood it. I think it's a universal language, and I think when you're in a diverse district, writing is such an abstract concept. I think it made it concrete. The formulation of ideas and topic sentences and transition now became visible to them in colors. And we thought, I've been a believer of it, a proponent, and that's why we're looking to see that. But as we look at the Ferryway scores, we see lots of good things there. Certainly not perfect, but it's going in the right direction, and it's a tribute to, I think, the school, their embracing of this, the leadership that Mr. Sepulveda and his team have provided. And we're excited. We are expecting these to be even better this coming year. Moving on to the Forestdale. Forestdale saw significant growth, which was a real plus. Mr. Concanon, Ms. Carpenito, and their team have really done a good job as we see that in the math. Their SGP was above the state average in grades 3 through 8. And that was the highest in the district, and that's, again, I put the most stock in the SGP as one of the statistical byproducts of MCAS. Math in grades 6 and 8 was much above that, and you see those scores in the 70 and high 60s. That's phenomenal. That's terrific, and I think that needs to be celebrated as a real plus as to what we've done at the Forestdale. In English Language Arts, SGPs is 73 and 72.5, with more than 60% of the kids meeting or exceeding expectations is terrific. Grade 8, they also did above the state average as well. So where do we want to look at focusing some of our work at the Forestdale? Well, 39% in math are meeting or exceeding expectations. We know that we want to get that much higher. There's going to be some work there in math. The practical constructed responses in math in grades 3 through 7 were below. So we've already identified a specific area within our math curriculum and within our math teaching strategies that we need to work on. ELA, 49% of them meet it or exceeded. Again, we're doing well, but we need to get more of our kids over that hurdle. We'd like to see that much higher, and we know that we can. And then just the overall performance of all the subgroups there. How are they going to do this? Well, I think look at the last bullet point is we're moving up, and that's moving that needle, moving a little bit beyond is a real springboard, and that success sort of snowballs. I think it demonstrates most importantly to the kids that they can do it and succeed. I think it gives our teachers the satisfaction in the classroom that, yes, I'm seeing results. So we take that as really a foundational piece to move on. In the 4th grade, their self-contained kids have been moved into an inclusive teaching model. We know that that's going to be something that's going to be another, I think, challenge and benefit to teaching and to learning. So we're excited about that as well, and then they're going to continue to work with the coaches. We have some really good coaches in the district. Math and ELA at the Forestdale did very well, and we're looking to continue to capitalize on that. If you look at the graphs, and just by the way, this whole presentation will be up on the website sometime tomorrow. We'll put it up there as a PDF and a link for you all to see, and we'll get it out there. I'll send out a link on social media to it as well sometime tomorrow. But you can see, you know, underscoring some of the successes that they've had. The first column is the school, and the last column on those bar graphs is the state. And, you know, we look at the math. We're doing okay. You know, we want that orange one in the school to come down a little and the green and the blues to go up. But we're not too far off there from where much of the state is. And like I said, our SGP was terrific. The Linden School, they performed much better than the state in both writing with the ideas and with the knowledge of writing conventions. In science, they did better than the state in both physical and the matter section of that. And then with the maths, they were pretty consistent with the district, not much of a deviation. Where did they look at challenge? The ELA in science, it was really vocabulary. So those are some teaching strategies we want to work on at the Linden specifically to get them into a better position for open response questions. And math, the primary area of weakness in math was the percentage of students that were meeting or exceeding. It was 44% in grades 3 through 8, and we just saw some of the other schools that had done better, so we want to get that up there, and we're excited with the new team and the focus on that. One of the areas is the science scores were not what we would expect on a STEAM school, but we're going to change that, and we're going to attack this with a plan that will yield success. We're very confident for the 2019 scores. Continue with the strategies that are in place for ELA as their plan of attack. That includes writing with colors. We have a really strong presence with the literacy program there as well, and their data analysis. We're sure going forward with the new administrative team in place that we will have solid results. We've already, some of the pre-testing that's going on is looking promising. And again, here's some of the scores here with Linden Schools aggregate numbers. And as you can see, as I noted earlier, we've got some successes there in the ELA category. We're right around the average with math and a little bit below in science and technology, but again, we're looking at changing that with some emphasis on how we're delivering that curriculum. The Salem Wood. The Salem Wood had some successes, particularly in grade 4 ELA and math. So although the Ferryway did not have as much success in 4th grade math and ELA, we did here at the Salem Wood with an increase of 17% of our kids that went up from meeting and exceeding. That was particularly noteworthy. Grade 5 science, we saw an increase in more of our kids. It increased by 9%, those students that were meeting or exceeding. And we increased in all of our science grades 4, 6, and 8. Where do we have some concerns? The SGP and students with disabilities in math and ELA. We need to increase that, and hopefully with the new, with what we got going forward, we'll be able to. With some of our math coaches that have been dispatched there, we're hoping that we will see some success with this. Working with our STEM director and his staff, we are hopeful that we will see this. We do have these identified. Again, how do we look to it? Some of the next steps, we want to increase this with more implementation of writing with colors, more analysis, item analysis, which we will get into during the year. And then the team leader meetings, we're looking at that vertical integration as we've seen in a couple of the schools that have identified that as well. Here are our overall scores with the Salem Wood. As you can see, particularly with the English language arts, those that are meeting, not too far off the state average. The exceeding is a little bit below, but we're looking at, hopefully that will level off. And again, you've also got to understand that the Salem Wood has the highest percentage of our sheltered English immersion students and EL students. So English is not the first language of more students at the Salem Wood than any school in Malden. So we know that there's some inherent challenges with that. It's not impossible to overcome, but this does a bit skew the results a little bit in terms of ELA and naturally math and science, as that can be a bit of a challenge that sometimes the test doesn't necessarily take into account. The BB school is our last elementary school, and we need to stop and salute them. They had a terrific year. When we look at and you can dive deeper on the website and look at some of this, but BB school met all of their targets. Particular areas of strength is look at those SGPs in the English language arts at 77.3%. That's terrific. High needs students, 77.8, and English learners, 78.3. That's terrific. We're percentiles ahead of the state average, and that's no small feat. That's terrific. That's why I think SGP is the best determination of really how our students are doing, because it's the one that sort of levels the playing field a bit. Grade 7, again, those SGPs, anytime you're in the 60s and above, you're really knocking it out of the park, and I think that BB did in grades 6, 7, and 8 in particular. Those are amazing results. Barbara O'Brien and her team absolutely crushed it down there. They did a great job, and we're very proud of that. Where do they need to work on? Well, you know, again, this is the middle section is sort of us looking in the mirror and say, what is it that we're not doing well? What do we need to work on? They're not happy with their overall SGP and English language arts at 47 and 46 in the 4th grade and high need students. Those are below the state average. They're not horrific, to be honest, but they're saying we can do better, and I love that attitude, that we can do better. Same thing with the math in 4th grade. My suspicion is that we're going to all of a sudden get some sort of memo from the state that 4th grade overall was one that dipped, but SGP sort of would mitigate some of that, but I think it was probably a more challenging test. This seems to be every year there's one of those math years or English tests at a grade seems to have results that are a bit of an anomaly, and my suspicion is that a grade 4 is where it might be this year. Next steps, they're going to continue to strengthen their student teacher assistant teams. That's the STAT process. Ms. O'Brien has been a pioneer in that, and we're hoping that with her use and expanding it, that we will use her as a mentor and a role model for our other principals, because we know it's a way that we target both the academic, the social and emotional, and the additional needs of our students. We get in there from attendance to behavior to the academics and what is holding this kid back from success, and line up the services or what is needed to support this student in every way we can. So we do them in all of our schools. I think that what has gone down at the BB and with Barbara's, she started this in her previous district. She's really the authority on this, and we know that it is successful. The results here bear it out in just a short time. Continue to coordinate the building services there from staff and student aspiration teams, really, you know, partnering up with our parents, volunteers, and really increasing as many opportunities for positive family engagement as we can. So they will continue on this, and we expect, given that, you can see that looking at the BB across the state, they're doing extremely well. They're ahead of them in most of them, and we're really proud of that. So I think we wanted to use them as overall, I'm pleased. Dr. Chase and I did meet with Deputy Commissioner Johnston after the MCAS results came out, and he was very praiseworthy. Overall, we're okay. We got some work to do, but we're going in the right direction. We're happy about that. We're going to use all the supports that are available to us, both in and out of the classroom, to really help our students succeed. Moving on as to what the district is looking at in math, and I don't want to necessarily read this, but we had all of our directors put in their plan and overview of this. Math, as we want to do, we want to continue to improve at the high school because we've sort of had a bit of a flat line there. We want to look at how we're doing on open response questions. That's, again, has plateaued. But things that we're doing well. We're looking at, our student growth percentiles in grades 3 through 8, 53.3. We're ahead of the state average. That's pretty good overall. We want to continue to improve with our English learners and former English learners with, how many are advanced and proficient. We're making some progress. We had 33% of them last year were proficient, 39% this year. So we're going in the right direction. This is not a process that you maintain miraculous results quickly. It's a really steady process. You adhere to the course, you continue with the plan, and you bear the fruits of that every year and build on it, and that's what we're hoping to do. In science, again, we saw some great improvement in the high school in terms of proficient. We went from 66 to 82%, which is terrific. That's really a tribute to, our students' achievement in science. That was a terrific, great stride there. We decreased the number of kids in warning. That went down 4%, and we increased the percentage of grades 5 students in proficient. So we went up. Again, we're seeing a steady rise there, 30%, 36, 40%. Hopefully we'll be into the mid-40s or higher this year and continue that trend. Where do we see challenges? Some of our subgroups continue to struggle, particularly English learners and students with disabilities. Again, not necessarily a surprise in an urban district with English learners, particularly in science, where vocabulary is really critical to understanding how you answer the question and how you even interpret the question. I think that, we need to understand when you speak another language, you are constantly interpreting in your head. Unless you hear English is not your first language, I think that you don't necessarily understand how that works. You don't understand that certain phrases don't necessarily translate. About 15 years ago, the state used a passage from Charles Dickens in the reading for grade 10. It was from, I think, Oliver Twist. I'm not necessarily sure which text it was from, but there was a phrase, he stood on his soapbox and made his point. Well, those of us who are English speakers, we know what that idiom means. That means that he pontificated, he gave his opinion. If you're Spanish and you interpreted that, it literally translates to he stood on a box of ivory soap. What does that mean? He stood on a box to get something off of a shelf? It doesn't translate. So every Spanish-speaking or former English learner got that whole section wrong because they missed the point, because it doesn't translate. So sometimes there are things in there that I think, and I'll just editorialize, I think penalize many of our urban kids, particularly English learners, because we take for granted, particularly when it comes to science, where the vocabulary is incredibly specific. I mean, I still have flashbacks of biology class of mixing up the whole thing on genetics and DNA and RNA, and it just got confusing to me, and English is my first language, so I can only, can't really fathom what that does to someone who it isn't. In English language arts, we see some challenges there that we want to improve on. We want to get our SGP up. That's really, I think, the best indication that we're being effective. That's going to be the mark that we're going to be looking at in terms of next year as to where our improvement's going. We did see some good work in the grades 3 through 8 with improvement and achievement targets being met, particularly in some of the subgroups. The percentage of our grades 6 and 7 students met or exceeded were above the state average, so that's a good thing. But we still want to see some of those gains and those gaps closed. How do we want to do it? We want to work with a lot of the DESE-related resources that we have. the regional DSAC, which has been renamed to something else. We're going to work and partner with them to help identify those gaps in achievement and get some growth and craft a year-long action plan. Dr. Chase and I have already started that path with the Department of Ed, and they're very excited, especially being in their backyard. But those are free services that have very effective results. My first year in my previous district, we had partnered with DSAC because we met the eligibility criteria. Between that and a couple other things we did, we went from a level 3 school to a level 1 in the first year. It was a whole host of factors that went into that, but I think partnering with the department is going to be very beneficial for us. You get a lot of the support that they bring in, which generally includes great expertise and experience. And we want to continue to work around identifying best practices as we look at more of an inclusion model. We look at having more of our students educated in a least restrictive setting. We're excited about the practices that we can get forward in our co-teaching models. With our English learner education, we saw some great SGP, as you can see. We had 57 and 56 in English and math respectively, above the state average. So, again, I get back to that. I know that for our English learners, I think that they face a bit of an uphill start, but when we look at measurements like our student growth percentile, it levels that to a degree. Our grade 10, the CPI for advanced and proficient, above the state average. So we're doing okay. Even in science, we saw that we're above that. So we know that there's some growth there. We're working in the right direction. Where do we see some challenge? Well, our ELA was a little bit below it. Not terribly off, but a little below. We want to overcome that and be above the state average next year, but we're not out of the, it's right there. It's just not much of a statistical difference, especially if you look at math, 46.7 to 47.5, we're right there. We're less than a percentage apart. We want to get more specific instruction. I know that Dr. Ndara has brought on some additional resources through one of the grants that we have to help support our students and their needs, and we're hiring that literacy assistant through the Title III grant. As you can see, both of them come through that Title III grant that Dr. Ndara and Dr. Chase have worked on to help those of our English learner students. In special education, because this is an entire subgroup as well, and that includes, our students with disabilities. We're looking at our ALT assessments. We did pretty well on that. Students earned levels 3s and 4 for level of complexity. That's a different measurement that we can get into it another time if you need to, but we did well with that. Our grades 3 through 8 inclusion classes did okay. We did all right. 11% of them met or exceeded expectations. You can see that right down the list there, we did all right. And our 4-year graduation rate, which is really a very critical measurement of our special education, we exceeded expectations. So that's a real plus. We're excited about that. Where do we have some challenges? We want to make sure that our students perform up to level 2 on the self-eval and generalized performances on the ALT assessment. We want to also make sure that our students in grades 3 through 8 inclusion in math, science, and technology. There are some specific challenges that we had there at grades 3, 4, 5, and 8, and we want to close that gap. How do we intend to do it? We have teachers that attend a lot of the trainings. We've got a tremendous amount of PD offerings on MCAS ALT portfolio development. And we're working with the state and some of the training offerings that are available for that. Look at how we review our current self-evaluation with what we have in place. We have math coaches that spend some of their time in the grade 3 classrooms. We want to continue working with Writing with Colors because, again, it's a bit of a universal language and platform for all of our students to work on. And, explore what we have around MCAS enrichment options or opportunities. How did we do compared to some of our neighbors? So, well, we're in the 5-district partnership. 4 of the 5 of us are urban. Winthrop is the one that's really not urban at all. So when we look at how we did at meeting and exceeding expectations, we highlighted the leader in the category. So reading at grade 3, Revere was there with 48%, as opposed to our 41, so we were right there at number 2. Math, we took a bit of a step backwards district-wide, where Revere did very well there. So going right down, we're right there. We're not too far off on some of them. We've got some work to do on others. But when we get to grades 6, 7, and 8, we really turn the tables. We crushed this. We did very well. And I think that that's a celebration of our staff that does a terrific job there. I mean, we were really the role model there, especially look at grade 6 ELA, 53%. The next closest was 42. 50% in math, grade 6. The next closest district was Revere at 37. 7th grade ELA, much ahead of our colleagues. Grades, 52 versus 44 for Revere. 45 versus 40. 46 versus 41, 50, and then science, which none of us did particularly well, but we were still the top dog there. So we did pretty well. We're really proud of this. This is, I think, a real cause for celebration, and I think it shows the progression of where a lot of, I know that many of our staff pointed out that vertical integration of grades, the upper grades, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and I think that we're doing a really good job with it. We want to continue. That's a really positive sign. When we get to the high school level, it's a bit of a mixed bag here. ELA, we're right there. I mean, we're 80 versus 83 with Revere at advanced and proficient. Everett was right there with 81, so we're right there with our neighbors. We do lead them in math, and we're not too far behind in science. So compared to like districts, which I think that Revere, Everett, and Chelsea are, we're doing okay, and I think that's what the Department of Ed noted, that with urbans, we're going in the right direction. What we want to continue to see, and I'm confident we can, is that progression going right through the high school. We want to see that trajectory line keep going up. So we're in a good spot there. Lastly, what our next steps are to continue to maintain a safe and positive school climate. We want to look at our benchmark assessment data to help drive instructions, continue to implement writing with colors, and work with our partners to identify and address the achievement gaps, which we will do. We have a number of opportunities for that this year, in particular the Barr Foundation grant, which I mentioned last month, looks at that from the continuum from the middle grades to the high school and beyond. So we're really confident that partnering with them, we will get a real good exposure and diagnosis of where some of those gaps are and what we can do to target that. And we want to look at what our best practices are at all levels, not just the high school, but really from the lower grades up, and want to keep that tight, cohesive transition from middle school to high school. That's one of that Barr Foundation grant that we were one of 5 cities in New England that received that is targeted to do. So going back to our beliefs, we have changed it for this year. This is our new one. The same first 3 are up there, and instead we combined every student and family will feel connected and supported. But the last part is really critical. The Malden schools will meet the needs of all students with a focus on continuous improvement. We want to put that growth mindset as part of what our staff comes in with every day. We did well today, we're going to do better tomorrow. We want to have that as the mindset. It's really, I think, the fabric of a district and professionals that want to continually improve. We should have this with all of our students. Every one of our kids, we want to challenge to be better than what they were. When we look at moving whole schools and districts, you look at those kids that are on the cusp. If they were proficient, we want to get them to advanced. If they were needs improvement, we want to get them to proficient. Moving them up, because the complicated formula they gives you a lot more points and ratings that will improve how we do, but just that focus of we're not resting on what we did. I think, one of it came up with, when we were looking at this, some of our schools, the principals were very happy about that, but their smile quickly turned when we ended the meeting and said, but we're going to go back and do better next year. We know that we can, but I think that little bit of a boost has given everybody that confidence and fuel that they need to go forward. So that's what we have for our MCAS presentation this year. If you want to convene back up to the dais, we can.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. I think what we may do, we could take some questions now, or do you want to digest this and we'll come back at the next meeting with some questions? All right, so what we'll do is let's look the data over and then plan on our next meeting of asking any questions as a result of the presentation this evening, okay? But for everyone else, that'll be posted sometime tomorrow on the school website.
Yes, we'll have this posted sometime. We'll try to get it posted before noon. I'll also try to send a link out via social media. Twitter is @MaldenPublic. If you follow me, we'll put out the link and put it on the school website as well.
Okay. All right, let's go to your district updates and highlights now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we have a couple highlights that I want to talk about. We have hired 31 high school students to work in our after-school program. This is the first year we've done this. We're really excited about this, of what it does for our students and for our students taking the after-school programs and also our students that are working it. It serves as a way for our programs to be more inclusive, engaged, and safer. And in this very short time, the last few weeks we've done this, we've had a couple of students who now are looking to pursue a career in education. I think last year I had talked about one of the ways we were looking to recruit particularly diverse educators was developing a program with one of our educational partners, like enrolling some of our students. When this opportunity presented itself, it's done probably even better and more immediate job. What we get is linguistic diversity, translation, which we had come into action actually on a missing student on Friday in the after-school program. We had two of our students who could speak with the grandparent, and within a very short time, the student was found, safe, happy, healthy, was where they thought. But again, we had those students right there that could do that translation. We're really proud of them. We've hired 31 of these students. And we think that we've already had a couple who have said, how do I get in to do this? I really enjoy working with our younger kids, and we couldn't be happier for this. Also at the Salemwood, acting principal Van Nguyen is now the permanent principal of Salemwood. Van is a long-time educator here in Malden who's been an assistant principal there, and we are excited to have her as part of the permanent team there as principal. And I think she does deserve a hand on that. And I think we know that she has done an exceptional job as the acting, and I couldn't think of anybody finer who would be more deserving and take care of the Salemwood staff and students better than Van. The Malden High School Start Time Subcommittee or Committee will be convening meeting again on November 14th, and they hope to have some more information regarding stakeholder group surveys and hopefully have that information for our next meeting. The Malden Public Schools team will be attending the Harvard Rides program. Myself, Dr. Chase, and 5 other folks from Malden will be over at Harvard on Thursday and Friday with Dr. Lee Title and Dr. Danisa Amonte. This training will help inform and support our efforts towards cultural proficiency. Harvard Rides is really the gold standard in education around cultural proficiency. We're part of a cohort that will be at Harvard on Thursday and Friday from as far away as Arizona and New York and San Francisco, amongst some of the other schools that are represented. I think there's about 7 of us, 7 different school districts. We were excited to be accepted into the program. This was started a few years ago, went on hiatus, and then we reapplied, and we're optimistic that this is going to be a very helpful tool for us as a district. The Advanced Placement Capstone program did exceptionally well, the seminar program. This is, Principal Strangelo sent out an email to his staff this weekend. It was implemented in Malden High School 3 years ago, and the results of this year's testing were extremely impressive. 100% of our AP seminar students, that was 20 students, passed the exam. That means they scored a 3, 4, or 5. That's the 2nd year in a row. 60% of those AP seminar students received a 4 or a 5, and that's the highest percentage of any public school in Massachusetts, with more than 9 students taking the exam. So that is a real plus, and a kudos to our students and our staff there. Being the top public school in Massachusetts with that is an honor. I think it's a tribute to the work that our kids did and our staff, their dedication. They did a great job. 100% of our AP research students, that was all 10 of them, passed with the 3, 4, 5. That was up from 80% last year. And we are the only public school in the state with more than 9 students taking the exam that have a 100% passing rate. So in those 2 courses, we were 100%, and nobody else can say that, which is remarkable. So in the public schools in the state, we had the most research students receiving a 4 or 5, including those who had larger number of students take the exam. So really a reflection of the hard work and commitment of our students and staff. Big thank you to the staff members and community members who've helped our students through the mentoring and providing access to classes and surveys. On October 26th, the mayor and I met with the state delegation regarding the supplemental budget and the educational benefits that may be in this budget. We're waiting word from Beacon Hill on how that may come down. You can read some of that's been in the paper, but we know our delegation has our interest at heart, particularly around the social emotional benefits that we may come out, as that was earmarked at one point by the governor. We're partnering with Harvard and Boston Children's Hospital to do a validation study at the Early Learning Center with 4- and 5-year-olds, and the results of the study will be shared with parents, staff, and the district to help better understand the progress and needs for intervention. So we're, Harvard and Boston Children's, I think, are the preeminent research programs in the country around young students, so we think that this is a great opportunity for parents to get a better understanding for those needs. Massachusetts passed the new dyslexia law. DESE will issue guidelines to assist the districts in developing screening processes and protocols for students to demonstrate one or more potential indications of dyslexia. So besides the screenings, the legislation will require school districts to train teachers on learning disability, its signs and intervention strategies, and it will require schools to adopt an evidence-based dyslexia remediation program. We're actually ahead of the curve on this with Dr. Donor and her staff with some of the reading programs, the Orton Gillingham that we've implemented. We've become a training site for this, so we feel that we're positioned well, much better than some of our neighboring communities, and we may become hopefully a training center for this down the road. That's just speculation. Some of the school events that have gone on, the BB Fall Festival is October 12th, and the Forestdale Fall Festival on October 27th. Great events. Forestdale was met with that monsoon rain, but it didn't stop the place from being packed and the mayor from enjoying his kettle corn that was cooked in front of him. He was very happy with that. He didn't know he had such a passion for kettle corn, but he does. We had CPAC group, had a couple meetings. We decorated pumpkins on the 18th of October. It was a terrific and well-attended event. Malden was graced with the presence of former CIA director John Brennan. Yep, that John Brennan, the one that has been in the news, and he has had a security clearance questioned by the president. We were fortunate enough to have Mr. Brennan at the Ferryway School on October 23rd. He happens to be a high school classmate of social studies teacher Tim Stratford, and he was able to secure him there. He was incredibly generous with his time. He was there for almost 3 hours. He entertained every question from every student, which was great. Personally, I asked him about what it is with our students being so diverse in Malden and with their linguistic abilities, what would be their career opportunities in the CIA? And he said, without equivocation, the CIA is the most diverse agency in the world, period. We have a lot of opportunities for many of our kids. I hope that they continue to do well in school, because that would be a phenomenal opportunity to serve the country and do good and make things, make their lives very enriched as well. It was wonderful to have him. We don't often get a person of that magnitude in Malden, so thank you to Mr. Stratford, Mr. Sepulveda up at the Ferryway, and the students. We were also able to bring up the high school students to hear him as well. STEM Week was going on in October, both at the high school and the Ferryway, and we had STEM Day last week at the Linden. We had a joint presentation by the Chinese Cultural Connection and Malden Reads on October 25th. We had the authors of Beijing to Boston. It was written by an American and a Chinese woman. She's a teacher down in the Cape. He's a writer, and they teamed up and did the book in both English and Mandarin. We had the opportunity to hear from them. There was a presentation, dance, food. It was a terrific event. I really enjoyed it. We had a great turnout from the community as well. The Malden Public Schools has been chosen by the Department of Education to be in a TV ad. We're in the process right now. Desi has selected some of the folks, and I'll have an update hopefully in the very near future. Maybe by next month, we can give you an idea of if they've filmed and will it be airing and when. But we were, really excited with that. They should be filming in the next week or so. Urban Superintendents Network, I continue to be very involved in that. We just had a meeting on November 2nd. The foundational budget review is a hot topic with us as we're looking to push the legislature to adhere to the original agreement back in 1993. And I know that I think that the Malden Education Association, the MTA, have made that presence known. Currently, Malden, just for a number's sake, is underfunded by the state by about $17 million. I do have a check that the MTA gave me in my office for $17 million as a symbol of what that shortfall is, but $17 million would do a tremendous amount of good in our district. So we're looking at ways in which we can push the legislature to get that. Had the opportunity to participate in the Malden Live event on October 11th. We had a district PTO meeting on the 12th. Housing Families had a breakfast that I attended on October 17th at the Irish American, where we heard some really moving testimonials from some of their clients that they've helped over the years transition into permanent housing. It was a really worthwhile event. Last Wednesday was trick-or-treating in the square. You could have received a candy bar from somebody dressed as Uncle Sam, sitting to my left. The Early Learning Center receives free snacks right now, and they will be receiving universal free breakfast next September. And we're looking at ways of securing the free lunch program as well. So I know that I mentioned that I would report back on that at our next meeting, and that's where we stand. Our sports teams, we had a very successful fall in many of our sports programs. The boys and girls soccer team made the state tournament. Unfortunately, both lost their opening round games. A heartbreaker today with the girls losing 2-0 to Lexington, and our boys lost on Saturday evening to East Boston. Our cheerleading team placed second out of 14 teams in the Northeast Conference. Kudos to the cheerleading team that did a great job. Our unified basketball team, which has been probably the most heartwarming sporting event I've seen in many years, they have played 4 times and have one more road game this Thursday at Billerica at 6 p.m. And then after that, they'll go to the Andover High School and compete in a unified basketball jamboree. It is wonderful. It's been a real highlight this year. We're really proud to have that program in. Upcoming events, tomorrow we have the Malden Education Exposition. It's really, we have all staff in the district reporting to the high school. We have about 70 course offerings taught by our own staff. We even have some students teaching a course as well. We're really excited about this professional development opportunity. I want to publicly thank Dr. Chase and Ms. Natalia Brennan, who have put a tremendous amount of time and effort into planning tomorrow's PD. It is titled the Malden Education Expo 2018, Celebration, Collaboration, and Inspiration. I just want to single those 2 ladies out who have done an outstanding job working right up until 5:30 tonight, stuffing folders and getting ready so when people come in, they know what courses they're going to. And that concludes my report for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions on the report? If not, thank you once again. Let's move to subcommittee reports. We'll first hear from Mr. Iavino regarding space and enrollment.
Thank you, Mayor. Now I'm on. Thank you. The enrollment as of Friday, November the 2nd, for the Malden Public Schools was 6,687. By way of contrast, last year's numbers were 6,700. So actually, we have 13 fewer students this year.
Okay.
We're on target. We're doing well. We've picked up a total of 54 students since September. So, you know, numbers are going up, but they're not going up to the point where things are in a dire situation. I have asked Ms. Federico to post once per month the numbers at each of the 5 schools, to put that on the website. I can quickly read the numbers. BB, the total enrollment at BB is 904, at Ferryway 912, at the Forestdale 560, the Linden 854, Salemwood 1,180. By means of contrast, my last year at the Salemwood, the total enrollment was 1,206. Malden High School has a total enrollment of 1,859, the Early Learning Center 329, and out-of-district placements 85. That gives us our total of 6,687. And those numbers will be posted, as I said, once per month.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iavino. Any questions of Mr. Iavino? Hearing none. Social, Emotional, and Physical Well-Being Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Ms. Beardsley.
On October 16th, we had our meeting, and we had it on Facebook Live, which helped parents and guardians follow. So if anyone wants to follow next time, that would be great. We had talked about recess policy and had a long talk with Superintendent O'Terry, and we talked about getting focus groups in each of the schools, including teachers, students, to figure out if we could add additional recess time. Was one of the things we're just going to bring it back to the schools, or also get a questionnaire to parents and guardians. So we'll be rolling that out soon. Did you want to talk about the period? Yeah, I can.
Ms. Spatafor.
Thank you. So we are formally rolling out a pilot program at the BB school, which will be a peer-to-peer mentoring program between our mainstream general education students and the students in our PACE classroom. It's currently it was in the works beforehand. We want to make it a formal pilot program, collect data on what the teachers are seeing, what the BCBAs or the RBTs are seeing with our PACE program students, as well as what our teachers in the general education, if they're maybe seeing higher attendance because kids are looking forward to volunteering. And that's what we are seeing right now, so we want to just make sure it's consistent before we make it a formal program and roll it out to more students to have the option to volunteer. Superintendent O'Terry was 100% on board, has seen success in mentoring programs amongst special education students and general education. I think it's just a fantastic idea.
What grades?
So right now, it's 4th and 5th grade, working with younger students in the PACE, so going in, reading, helping with classwork, coloring, just actually being a good, positive role model, allowing our general education students to go in and see students with disabilities. It doesn't seem so foreign, as well as our PACE students are seeing their peers that they don't normally get to see because they're in a separate classroom, and building friendships.
Okay, very good. Any questions of either Ms. Beardsley or Ms. Spatafora? Hearing none, let's stay with Ms. Beardsley and get an update regarding the Shore Collaborative.
Okay, hold on 1 second. So I'm the representative from Malden on the board of directors at Shore Educational Collaborative, and I go each month. It's an out-of-district placement that offers special education and day service for behaviorally and academically challenged students and adults. So as of October, Malden has 16 students placed at Shore, and we just wanted to give a brief update to people. They recently signed a lease in Chelsea and are slated to move the adult ed and the opposite out of the current building they're in, and so they'll free up space for the students, and they're going to redesign the current space. And they have an approximate date of March 2019, and they just received a 3-year accreditation and are deemed to have excellent services for all stakeholders. And that's
Okay, any questions there? All right, let's take up a few motions and resolutions. So the first one, Mr. Furrier, you're going to talk about the Malden High School Student and Family Handbook for 2018-2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to invite up Mr. Chris Mastrangelo in case we have some questions up here.
All right, frame it for us. This is a continuation from the last meeting, right?
Yeah.
We made some suggestions, I believe, and I think we all wanted to just take a couple weeks to digest the original presentation. So do we have questions for our principal?
Well, we were supposed to get, the legal department was supposed to check it over. Has that been done?
Right.
It was done.
Mr. Angelo, legal has reviewed?
Yep, they reviewed
and it's
it.
in order? Okay.
Everything in order. They wanted us to add a couple things. They did it. We added in. We had, I think, 2 things we added in.
Okay. Superintendent? Sure.
Yeah, we had our legal team that oversees our special education and student legal services reviewed it. They have a couple in-house people who are experts on this, and they made some suggestions, particularly around some of the wording on recent legislation and updates to that. So we, are in compliance, which is important when you are going forward, particularly in matters of student discipline, that we're, on board, and that does not become an area that sidetracks anything that we're doing.
Okay. Let me just check in with our student representative. Do you want to add anything? You've had a chance, you said, to review it? Or skim it?
Yeah, I actually have. So what I have in front of me is the 2017-2018 handbook. And I was looking through it, and for one of my classes, we actually had to look through and analyze parts of it. And the part we chose to analyze was the responsibility regarding alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other drugs. And what we found in it, we as a group decided that there was a lot of ambiguous language that it could lead to potential, as much as we like to think that there's no bias in schools, there's always underlying bias. And I know tomorrow during the professional development day, there's going to be the bias training. And so what I wanted to just kind of bring up, and I've kind of like made notes and stuff, is that although we like to think like teachers are like unbiased and they don't view other students, like even academically versus like if someone gets straight A's, if someone gets straight C's, if someone's black, if someone's white, what I found was that it was a lot of it was left up into for interpretation, and a lot of it was like kind of left up to the students. And although we like to think that every student is treated equally in the schools, it might not necessarily be true. And I feel like just kind of fine-tuning the language in this section would kind of make bias like more subdued and less possible.
Do you have specific areas in that, Sydney?
I do. So it is the 5th paragraph, and it kind of leaves the entire kind of situation up to the interpretation of teachers and house principals. And there's not really a specific procedure. There's kind of just like if a teacher thinks, if a teacher decides that this person is under the influence, and it kind of there's no specific procedure to figure that out, and it's kind of honestly kind of almost worries me in a bit because students may not have the same treatment by all staff members and teachers.
Okay. So I think if I could speak to that section, what is ambiguous in the sense that the teacher really doesn't have the training or the authority to make a snap judgment. If I'm looking at a student and I think that shows signs of potentially being under the influence or of having possession, that allows them the opportunity to kick it up to the administrative. At that point, if we feel that a student might be under influence, we have medical personnel that we can call in. And I think in this case, it may be ambiguous by choice in the sense that if we're too specific in that area, then we're required to have that staff member make a snap decision on the case, and that I don't think is fair. I think that brings in bias, maybe even potentially more so. This kind of creates a checks and balances where it's, I have a thought, I kick it up to the administration, we can bring in our medical personnel if needed. Administratively, we can bring in more than one administrator and make a group decision in that sense. I think that might be in that area, that ambiguous language that might maybe shed some light for the reasoning behind that, potentially. Is this Mr. Tivnan's class?
Yeah.
God bless him.
Did you have any other thoughts or suggestions?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, what we could do maybe going forward, you and your classmates, if you came up with some language that the principal could see, maybe we can incorporate on the next time we take this up. Were there any questions, the members? So, Mr. Froyo, you have your questions answered. Do you want to make a motion, or?
I make a motion that we okay this book.
2018, 2019?
2018, 2019 student handbook, student and parent handbook.
All right, is there a second to Ms. Bordenaro? So it's now before us for a vote. Any other questions, queries, thoughts, suggestions? And Superintendent, you're good? You said on your end?
Yeah, I think that we've had those addressed, and I appreciate the student representative Stump's insights on that as well. I think, what we want to do in any instance like that is it's first about health and safety. So I think that sometimes those are vaguely worded because we want to make sure that we're not wording it as a discipline issue specifically or too far on the other end. So I think that, those are areas that our attorneys view because they often come back sometimes with a countercharge of discrimination. So I appreciate that, and we'll make sure that that's noted as well. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Principal. Now we're going to go to Ms. Beardsley on the next two items. The first one has to do with a resolution in support of yes on question 3.
Is it on? Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I tried to get this to the October meeting, but I missed the deadline. I realized that voting is tomorrow, and this is one of the questions on the ballot. So I just wanted to make a resolution for the school committee. Do you want me to read it? Or?
Sure, please.
So whereas Massachusetts House of Representatives and Senate approved the addition of gender identity to the Massachusetts Public Accommodations Law, on July 8th, 2016, and whereas Governor Charlie Baker signed this legislation, an act relative to transgender anti-discrimination, into law on July 8th, 2016, and whereas the updated Massachusetts Public Accommodation Law has been in full effect since October 1st, 2016, and whereas Malden Public Schools states that their goal is to design and provide the most supportive and safe educational setting that will lead to the best possible outcomes for all students, and whereas the Massachusetts statewide election upcoming tomorrow, November 6, 2018, includes a ballot question seeking to repeal the provision of the Massachusetts Public Accommodations Law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of gender identity in places of public accommodation. And whereas repeal of those provisions of the Massachusetts Public Accommodations Law would be contrary to the values and principles of the City of Malden, and therefore be it that the Malden School Committee does hereby affirm our commitment to equal protection under the laws for all people, and therefore be it further resolved that this committee opposes any effort to infringe on the rights of transgender and gender nonconforming members of our community, and therefore be it further resolved that we, the members of the committee, do hereby pledge to sign on to the Yes on 3 coalition organized by the Freedom for All Massachusetts.
Okay, there you have it. So you're asking us to support it.
Yep.
You've made the motion. Is there a second just to get it properly before us? Mr. Iavino seconds it. So now it's before us. Is there any discussion? Everybody clear on what's being asked? Mr. Iavino, and then we're going to go to Ms. Leon.
Just to make it crystal clear, what this particular resolution does is we're stating that we favor the current law and we do not want it changed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Ms. Leon.
Mr. Iavino kind of answered my question already, but I'm just wondering, just because the timing on this resolution with the election being tomorrow, is this something that we do now or when it passes? I'm just worried about the timing.
Ms. Beardsley?
I think it's that either way, because I think every individual votes their own conscience on election day, but we as a committee can decide that whenever we want, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Does that answer it, Ms. Leon?
Yeah.
Okay. Other folks, Ms. Spatafora?
And just for some clarity, regardless of how the vote ends tomorrow in public polls, we have always stood as a school district to be inclusive and welcoming to everybody. So just clarity that regardless of how people vote, our school has always been welcoming too.
Sure. All right. Anybody else? So again, everybody clear on what we're voting for? I think Mr. Iavino did that for us. So no other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Now let's stay with Ms. Beardsley under Little Free Libraries.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked the students from the high school as well as their teacher to come today. I'm gonna ask if we could put some more Little Free Libraries up in the other schools around the city. And I just wanted to, did you want me to read this first or just show them, or?
Whatever you
I'll just read it first. So it's a motion to place the Little Free Libraries on Malden Public School premises. So it's similar to the last one we did at the Linden, which actually has gone in, and a lot of books have been changing hands, which is great. So I'm seeking approval to place the Little Free Libraries on the following school grounds: Malden High School, the Early Learning Center, the Forestdale School, the Salem Wood School, and the Ferryway School. Little Free Library is a nonprofit organization that inspires love of reading, builds community, and sparks creativity by fostering neighborhood book exchange. The Little Free Libraries are made by Malden High School students in the makerspace and overseen by their teacher, Ashley Freeman. The schools will need to identify groups of students to paint and decide where to place them. The Malden Department of Public Works has graciously donated time to install them if they need to be placed outside, and myself or someone from the school can be the liaison for the first year to set up the rules and regulations for the library.
And that's Department of Public Facilities, right?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's hear from the superintendent, make sure we're on the right track.
I applaud this effort. I think that it's a really great way to encourage literacy. I think that, too often right now, we're in a digital age, and books have become a bit passé, and this sort of is a bit of a reminder that there's, pages there. I think that they're visible and positioned well at the school, so it's a constant reminder. I really have been happy with the success of what has gone on at the Linden, and I think encouraging this from our early learning kids at the ELC right up through the high school is a wonderful statement of the committee and the community partnering with our school district, so I am in complete support of it.
All right, so Ms. Beardsley's made the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Leon. So, any further discussion? And you'll let the committee know as they're going to be installed?
Yeah, so I was hoping someone else would, from each school, would take it on, but I can try that. I just wanted to just do a huge shout out to the Makerspace and Ashley Freeman. They designed, I mean, if anyone's ever been to this space, it's phenomenal. They have, they designed each group. There's actually one more, but they're making some modifications. So they designed them, obviously, and then they started working on them, and they've redesigned them, and they've gone back and forth. One of them has a counter on it that shows how many times it's been opened and closed, and there's one that has a light in it, and then those other two. So those are fully made, constructed by the students, and
Excellent.
yeah, it's
Okay.
just really cool.
Any other questions, thoughts? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? So the ayes have it. That carries unanimously. One more motion and/or resolution. Let's see. School council member appointments, Mr. Iavino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the school councils in each of the schools, Malden High School all the way down, have been appointed. They have been duly elected, formed, and I would recommend that we, as a formal resolution from the school committee, that we approve these individuals. I'm not going to read the names unless you want me to, but they can be posted on the city's website. Okay. So my recommendation would be that this committee vote to approve the school committees that are the school councils that are in effect for the 2018-2019 school year.
Okay. Second? Seconded by Ms. Bordenaro. So any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. We're at item number 6 now on the agenda, personal privilege. So normally we would take this up after executive session, but let's take personal privilege now. Then we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of contracts and non-union raises. We may come back out and act on those issues, and then we'll move adjournment. So is everybody clear on that? So let's go left to right. Let's start with Mr. Drummy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ELC on November 15th and 16th, they're going to be having Hat Day. On the 30th, which is a Friday, they're having PTO Yoga Night. That's from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And they're having a district-wide PTO meeting on the 16th, and that's at 8:45 a.m. At the Ferryway, Wednesday the 7th, they're having I guess an abbreviated version of what the superintendent gave us. They have an MCAS for parents in the auditorium. That's from 5 to 6 o'clock. We also have on Thursday the 8th a free workshop for parents about iReady, which I believe is a new Malden Public Schools online assessment tool that they can use for instruction and helping student needs, and also helps empower the teachers a little bit. That's been put on by Janice Raymond in the Title I group. On the 14th, they're having a family fun pizza night. That's at 6:30 in the cafeteria. On Thursday, the 29th, there is the parent guardian teacher night, and that's from 6 to 7:30. The next PTO meeting at the Ferryway is going to be on December 4th, and that's at 3 o'clock, or rather 3:30 in the library. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. See you all at the parade, I hope. That's coming up the day after Thanksgiving. And also, if Veterans Day is coming up, so please get out, honor your veterans, march, wave at them, and be at the memorial at Deborah Park for the rededication. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Drummy. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of points of information coming out of the BB school. Obviously, like Mr. Drummy just said, the Parade of Holiday Traditions is going to be the day after Thanksgiving, so the BB school will be there in representation for them. Also, happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there here in the city. We commend your work that you've done over the years, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCarthy. Let me just get, you said the Saturday after, it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving on the holiday parade. Yes.
Oh,
I think you
sorry.
said the day.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Saturday,
Saturday after.
Yeah, I was confused myself. Okay. All right, let's go now to Ms. Bordenaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. The winter season is now open for registration. Just sign up at maldenrec.com. Don't forget to vote tomorrow. Please, everyone vote. And happy Thanksgiving to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bordenaro. Mr. Iavino.
Just a couple of items. I too want to honor our veterans and wish a very happy and safe Veterans Day for those men and women who have served our country bravely over the many years. I want to wish everybody, students, staff, and families, a happy Thanksgiving. I want to say that after the Parade of Holiday Traditions, the Malden High School Alumni Association will be having their annual pasta dinner. It's at Anthony's on Canal Street. I think everybody knows where Anthony's restaurant is. They will have some tickets at the door. Tickets are $15 and $10, or I think for children under the age of 12. It's a wonderful way to support the association who does wonderful things for the students of Malden High School. And no matter what you do tomorrow, get out and vote. Nothing's more important. Rain, snow, sleet, whatever. Get out and vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for. Just get out there. If you don't, you've got no gripe, no complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iavino. Mr. Froyo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Linden STEAM Academy Governing Board will have their monthly meeting on Wednesday, the 14th at 5:45 in the Linden School Auditorium. Also, on the November 19th, the report cards will be going out. And also, happy Thanksgiving after Malden beats Medford in the football game.
Thank you, Mr. Furrier. Ms. Spatafor.
Thank you. Just a few more updates for BB. The Grade 3 Thanksgiving Day program will be Tuesday, the 20th at 1:15. The next school council meeting will also be held on November 28th at 3:00 p.m. and parent visitation night is the same night, the 28th, K through 8, 6:30 to 8 p.m. The last CPAC meeting, and I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Superintendent O'Terry's administration for their showing at our last meeting, which was on why inclusion matters in the school. Not only did we have a great turnout, but just to turn around and see principals and vice principals and SPED directors, it was kudos to everybody that came. Which leads me into the next meeting for CPAC is going to be November 20th, and the discussion is going to be around collaborative problem solving. And because our next meeting falls in the middle of December, our December CPAC meeting will discuss basic rights by the Federation for Children with Special Needs. That's December 6th. Both of those are at the Forestdale School cafeteria, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30. And happy Veterans Day, happy Thanksgiving. Vote, vote, vote.
Thank you. Ms. Beardsley?
I just wanted to echo the same thing, get out and vote, thank the veterans, and then I wanted to thank thank everyone that helped with putting the Little Free Library up at the Linden, and the Forestdale announcements. The annual can drive to support the Bread of Life starts November 13th. November 6th, PTO board meeting at 6 p.m. November 13th, PTO meeting 6 in the library. The 19th to the 30th, Texas Roadhouse gift card sale fundraiser. And in December, for our meeting, the 3rd to the 7th is the holiday store. The 4th is PTO board meeting at 6. The 7th is Family Friday gingerbread decorating. And the 11th is PTO meeting 6 p.m. in the library.
Okay, great. And Superintendent, you want to add something?
I just wanted to remind our families out there is no school tomorrow on November 6th, Election Day. We will be in professional development, and then also you'll be receiving a call later in the week that no school next Monday, November 12th, as it is our observance of Veterans Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's entertain a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Iavino, you want to make it?
Yes, make a motion that we adjourn to executive, not adjourn, we go into executive session for the purposes of contract discussion and negotiation.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Let's have the clerk call the roll.
Yes. Ms. Buonanno? Yes. Mr. Drummy?
Yes.
Mr. Froyo?
Yes.
Mr. Iavino?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Spatafora?
Yes.
Mayor Christensen?
Yes. Okay, we'll now go into executive session.